Shadow stands as Zhang Yimou's masterpiece of visual storytelling and political intrigue, a film that weaves together ancient Chinese warfare with modern cinematic techniques to create something both timeless and revolutionary. The movie opens in the Kingdom of Pei during the Three Kingdoms period, where viewers immediately encounter a world painted almost entirely in black and white, with subtle touches of color that serve to highlight specific emotional beats and narrative moments. This distinctive visual approach becomes the film's calling card, creating an aesthetic that feels like watching ink paintings come to life on screen. The story centers around Commander Ziyu, played with remarkable intensity by Deng Chao, though the audience quickly learns that appearances can be deceiving in this world of shadows and doubles. What initially seems like a straightforward tale of military strategy and political maneuvering soon reveals itself to be a complex exploration of identity, power, and the cost of ambition. The opening scenes establish the precarious political situation in Pei, where King Pei has reluctantly signed a peace treaty with the neighboring Yang Kingdom after losing the strategic Jing city in battle. Commander Ziyu appears to be pushing against this peace, advocating for renewed military action to reclaim their lost territory. However, Zhang Yimou quickly begins peeling back layers of deception that will define the entire narrative structure. The real Commander Ziyu has been secretly bedridden for years, slowly dying from injuries sustained in his last battle with Yang Cang, the legendary warrior who now controls Jing city. The man everyone believes to be Ziyu is actually his body double, known only as Shadow, who has spent years being trained and molded to perfectly impersonate his master. This revelation transforms the entire viewing experience, as audiences must constantly question what they are seeing and who they can trust. The Shadow has been living Ziyu's life so completely that even the commander's wife, Xiao Ai, played with delicate complexity by Sun Li, cannot distinguish between her husband and his double. This creates a deeply uncomfortable dynamic where the Shadow finds himself caught between duty to his master and his growing feelings for a woman who believes him to be someone else entirely. Zhang Yimou uses this central deception to explore themes that have long fascinated him throughout his career. The concept of performance and authenticity runs throughout the film, questioning whether someone can become so skilled at pretending to be another person that the distinction between original and copy becomes meaningless. The Shadow has studied every gesture, every mannerism, every speech pattern of the real Ziyu so thoroughly that he has arguably become more Ziyu than Ziyu himself, who lies weakening in his hidden chamber. The visual design of Shadow deserves extensive analysis, as it represents one of the most distinctive aesthetic approaches in contemporary cinema. Zhang Yimou and his cinematographer Zhao Xiaoding have created a world that looks like it exists within traditional Chinese scroll paintings. The predominantly monochromatic palette serves multiple narrative functions beyond mere visual appeal. It creates a sense of moral ambiguity, where traditional concepts of good and evil become as blurred as the distinction between black and white on screen. The few moments of color that do appear carry enormous symbolic weight. When blood appears on screen, its vivid red creates a shocking contrast against the muted background, emphasizing the violence and sacrifice that underlies all political power. The subtle blues and greens that occasionally filter through the composition suggest nature and life, persisting despite human conflict and ambition. These color choices are never arbitrary, but always serve the emotional and thematic content of specific scenes. The production design extends this monochromatic vision into every aspect of the film's visual world. Costumes are rendered in varying shades of gray and white, with fabric textures and subtle patterns providing visual interest without breaking the overall aesthetic unity. The architecture of Pei Palace and the surrounding environments feels both historically grounded and artistically stylized, creating locations that seem to exist in a heightened version of reality, rather than a purely realistic historical setting. The political intrigue that drives Shadow's plot reflects Zhang Yimou's sophisticated understanding of power, dynamics, and court politics. King Pei, portrayed by Zheng Kai, represents a ruler caught between pragmatic concerns and the expectations of strength that define his position. He has chosen peace over continued warfare, but this decision has left him vulnerable to criticism from both his subjects and his military commanders. The king's relationship with Commander Ziyu, or rather with the Shadow impersonating him, becomes a complex dance of manipulation and counter-manipulation. Zhang Yimou presents the court of Pei as a place where everyone is performing some version of themselves, where authentic emotion and genuine relationships become nearly impossible to maintain. The shadow must navigate not only his deception of the king, but also his interactions with other court officials who may have their own hidden agendas and suspicions. This creates an atmosphere of constant tension where every conversation carries the potential for exposure and disaster. The film's exploration of martial arts and warfare represents another area where Zhang Yimou demonstrates his mastery of cinematic storytelling. The action sequences in Shadow are choreographed with an eye toward both spectacular entertainment and thematic significance. The weapon of choice throughout the film is an unusual dual blade system that can be separated into individual swords or combined into a single double-edged weapon. This design choice reflects the film's central themes of duality and the merging of separate identities. The training sequences where the Shadow learns to master this unique fighting style serve as metaphors for his broader transformation into Ziyu. Each movement he learns, each technique he masters, represents another step in his complete assumption of his master's identity. The physicality of the martial arts training mirrors the psychological and emotional training he has undergone to become a perfect duplicate of another person. When the inevitable confrontations arrive, Zhang Yimou stages them with a combination of brutal realism and artistic grace. The fights feel consequential and dangerous, while maintaining the aesthetic beauty that defines the entire film. Blood and violence are never gratuitous but always serve the narrative purpose of showing the true cost of the political games being played by the various characters. The relationship between the Shadow and Xiao Ai forms the emotional heart of the film and provides its most complex moral questions. Xiao Ai has been living with a man she believes to be her husband for years, but who is actually an impostor trained to deceive her. The Shadow, meanwhile, has developed genuine feelings for her, while knowing that their entire relationship is built on a fundamental lie. This creates a situation where both characters are trapped by circumstances beyond their control. Sun Li's performance as Xiao Ai captures the quiet strength and growing suspicion of a woman who senses something has changed about her husband but cannot identify exactly what feels different. Her interactions with the Shadow become increasingly charged with unspoken tension as she begins to notice small discrepancies in his behavior and response. The film suggests that on some level, she may understand the deception but chooses not to confront it directly. The Shadow's dilemma reflects broader questions about identity and authenticity that resonate throughout the film. He has spent so long becoming Ziyu that his own original personality has become almost completely submerged. When he experiences genuine emotions toward Xiao Ai, he must question whether these feelings belong to him or to the man he is impersonating. This psychological complexity elevates what could have been a simple story of deception into a profound meditation on the nature of self. The real Commander Ziyu, confined to his sickbed and slowly dying, represents another fascinating character study. Deng Chao's dual performance as both the Shadow and the real Ziyu showcases remarkable range and subtlety. The bedridden commander is bitter, manipulative, and increasingly desperate as he realizes his physical condition may never improve enough to allow him to reclaim his public life. He treats his Shadow not as a person but as a tool, showing little concern for the emotional or psychological toll of the deception. Yet, Ziyu's condition also makes him pitiable. He has sacrificed everything for his military career and his loyalty to Pei, only to find himself trapped in a body that can no longer serve his ambitions. His relationship with his Shadow becomes a twisted form of immortality, allowing him to continue existing in the world through another person's performance of his identity. This dynamic raises disturbing questions about exploitation and the ethics of using another human being as an extension of oneself. The political machinations surrounding the conflict with Yang Kingdom provide the external pressure that drives the plot toward its climactic confrontation. Yang Cang, the warrior who defeated Ziyu years earlier, represents both a personal nemesis and a symbol of Pei's military humiliation. The Shadow's mission to challenge Yang Cang becomes a test not only of his fighting skills, but of his complete transformation into Ziyu. Zhang Yimou builds tension skillfully as various plans and counterplans unfold within the court. King Pei's apparent acceptance of the Shadow's aggressive military proposals masks his own deeper strategy. The king has begun to suspect the truth about Ziyu's condition and sees an opportunity to use this knowledge to his own advantage. This creates multiple layers of deception and manipulation, with each character believing they are controlled by others. while actually being controlled by others. The film's treatment of loyalty and betrayal reflects Zhang Yimou's interest in the moral complexities of political power. Characters who appear to be acting out of patriotic duty are often motivated by personal ambition or revenge. Those who seem treacherous may actually be showing the deepest forms of loyalty to their ideals, rather than to specific individuals. The shadow himself embodies this contradiction, as his deception of everyone around him stems from his absolute loyalty to his master's wishes. The cinematography throughout Shadow deserves recognition as some of the finest work in contemporary cinema. Zhao Xiaoding's camera moves with fluid grace through the monochromatic world, finding beauty in shadows and subtle gradations of light and dark. The composition of individual shots often resembles classical Chinese paintings, with careful attention to negative space and the balance between different elements within the frame. The use of natural lighting creates a soft, diffused quality that enhances the dreamlike atmosphere of the story. Even in scenes of intense political drama or violent confrontation, there is an ethereal quality to the visual presentation that reminds viewers they are watching a highly stylized interpretation of reality, rather than a straightforward historical recreation. This aesthetic choice supports the film's thematic concerns with illusion and the difficulty of distinguishing between appearance and reality. The sound design and musical score contribute significantly to Shadow. The traditional Chinese instruments used in the soundtrack create an authentic period atmosphere while also supporting the film's emotional rhythms. The music swells and recedes in harmony with the characters' internal conflicts, never overwhelming the dialogue or visual storytelling, but always enhancing the viewer's emotional engagement with the story. During action sequences, the sound design emphasizes the metallic clash of weapons and the physical impact of combat without resorting to exaggerated Hollywood-style effects. This restraint maintains the film's overall aesthetic coherence, while ensuring that violent moments carry appropriate weight and consequence. The subtle ambient sounds of court life, weather, and natural environments create a rich sonic landscape. The middle section of Shadow focuses intensively on the preparation for the Shadow's ultimate mission. This portion of the film serves multiple narrative functions, building suspense toward the inevitable confrontation, while also deepening the character development and thematic exploration. The Shadow must not only perfect his martial arts skills, but also navigate the increasingly complex political situation in the court. Zhang Yimou uses this preparation phase to explore the psychological toll of the Shadow's deception. As the moment of truth approaches, the boundaries between his assumed identity and his authentic self become increasingly blurred. He begins to internalize not only Ziyu's mannerisms and fighting techniques, but also his ambitions and desires. This transformation raises questions about whether the Shadow is losing himself entirely or finally discovering who he truly is through the process of becoming someone else. The training sequences are choreographed and filmed with meticulous attention to detail. Each movement in the martial arts forms carries symbolic weight, representing stages in the Shadow's transformation. The unique dual blade fighting style becomes a metaphor for the duality that defines. When the blades are separated, they represent the division between his true self and his assumed identity. When combined into a single weapon, they suggest the possibility of integration and wholeness. The relationship dynamics within the court become increasingly tense as various characters begin to suspect that something is not as it appears. Zhang Yimou creates an atmosphere of paranoia and mistrust where every glance and gesture carries potential significance. The Shadow must be constantly vigilant, not only maintaining his performance as Ziyu, but also watching for signs that others may be seeing through his deception. King Pei's growing awareness of the situation adds another layer of complexity to the political intrigue. The king begins to manipulate events in ways that suggest he may know more than he is revealing about Ziyu's true condition. This creates a fascinating dynamic where the Shadow believes he is deceiving the king while the king may actually be several steps ahead in the larger game of political chess. The court officials and military commanders surrounding these central figures each have their own motivations and suspicions. Zhang Yimou presents them as complex individuals rather than simple political archetypes. Some are genuinely concerned about Pei's military situation and believe that renewed conflict with Yang Kingdom is necessary. Others see opportunity in the chaos and confusion surrounding Ziyu's apparent change in behavior, and strategic thinking. The film's exploration of gender roles and relationships adds depth to its political and philosophical. Xiao Ai's position as EU's wife places her in a uniquely vulnerable situation where she has the most intimate knowledge of the man she believes to be her husband, but lacks the political power to act on her suspicions. Her growing awareness that something fundamental has changed creates internal conflict between her loyalty to her marriage and her sense that she is being deceived. The other women in the court, including servants and concubines, are shown as keen observers of the political currents swirling around them. While they may lack formal power, they possess information and insights that could prove crucial to the unfolding drama. Zhang Yimou suggests that those who are marginalized or overlooked often see truth more clearly than those who are focused on maintaining their positions of authority. The visual storytelling reaches new heights in the scenes leading up to the climactic confrontation. Zhang Yimou uses the monochromatic palette to create increasingly abstract and symbolic imagery. Shadows become more prominent and meaningful, suggesting the growing dominance of illusion over reality in the characters' lives. The careful composition of shots emphasizes geometric patterns and architectural lines that create a sense of entrapment and limitation. The weather and natural elements play important symbolic roles throughout this section of the film. Rain becomes a recurring motif, washing away illusions and revealing hidden truths. Wind disturbs carefully arranged surfaces, suggesting the instability underlying the apparent order of court life. These environmental elements are never merely decorative, but always serve the thematic content of the narrative. As the Shadow's mission approaches its culmination, Zhang Yimou builds tension through a series of reveals and reversals that force both characters and audience to constantly reevaluate their understanding of the situation. Information that seemed reliable is revealed to be incomplete or deliberately misleading. Characters who appear to be allies show themselves to have conflicting loyalties and hidden agendas. The Shadow's internal conflict becomes more acute as he prepares for what may be his final performance as Ziyu. He must decide whether his loyalty lies with the dying man who has controlled his life for years, or with his own emerging sense of identity and desire for authentic relationships. This decision will ultimately determine not only the outcome of his confrontation with Yang Cang, but also the future direction of his life. The political implications of the Shadow's mission extend beyond the personal conflict between him and Yang Cang. The outcome of their battle will determine whether PA continues its uneasy peace with Yang Kingdom or returns to open warfare. King Pai's decision to allow or encourage this confrontation reflects his own calculation of political advantage and personal survival in a dangerous world, where military strength often determines royal legitimacy. Zhang Yimou presents these political calculations with sophisticated understanding of how power operates in autocratic systems. Kings must constantly balance competing interests and demonstrate strength to maintain their authority, but they also must avoid conflicts that could destroy their kingdoms entirely. The Shadow's mission becomes a way for King Pei to test the waters of renewed conflict without fully committing himself to a course of action that cannot be reversed. The film's treatment of martial arts philosophy reflects traditional Chinese concepts of balance, harmony, and the unity of opposites. The Shadow's training in the dual blade fighting style requires him to master techniques that seem contradictory but ultimately complement each other. This martial arts philosophy mirrors the psychological integration he must achieve to function effectively as both himself and Ziyu. The weapons themselves become characters in their own right, with distinct personalities and capabilities that must be understood and respected. The Shadow's relationship with his blades evolves throughout the film from initial awkwardness to growing competence to final mastery. This progression parallels his emotional and psychological development as he becomes more confident in his assumed identity, while also more aware of the costs of his deception. The climactic sequence of Shadow represents the culmination of all the film's thematic and the confrontation between the Shadow and Yang Cang takes place in a setting that combines natural beauty with symbolic significance. Zhang Yimou stages this battle as both a spectacular martial arts showcase and a profound meditation on identity, duty, and the nature of heroism. The fight choreography in this sequence deserves recognition as some of the finest ever captured on film. The movements are simultaneously realistic and stylized, brutal and beautiful. Each exchange between the combatants carries emotional and narrative weight beyond the immediate physical conflict. The shadow is fighting not only for victory, but for the right to determine his own future and identity. Yang Cang, portrayed with intimidating presence by Hu Jun, represents more than just a military opponent. He embodies the shadow's past failures and limitations, the external force that created the circumstances requiring his existence as a double. Defeating Yang Cang would mean not only achieving victory for Pei, but also symbolically overcoming the events that trapped him in his current situation. The visual presentation of the climactic battle uses every element of the film's distinctive aesthetic to maximum effect. The monochromatic palette creates stark contrasts that emphasize the drama of each moment. The careful choreography makes every movement significant, avoiding the rapid editing and chaotic camera work that characterizes many contemporary action sequences. Instead, Zhang Yimou allows viewers to appreciate the skill and artistry of the martial arts while never losing sight of the emotional stakes driving the conflict. The resolution of the battle carries implications that extend far beyond the immediate participants. The outcome will determine the future relationship between Pei and Yang Kingdom, the fate of Jing City, and the political position of King Pei. More personally, it will decide whether the shadow can finally escape the constraints of his assumed identity, or will remain forever trapped in the role he has played for years. The aftermath of the climactic confrontation reveals the true complexity of Zhang Yimou's storytelling. Victory in battle does not automatically resolve the deeper conflicts that have driven the narrative. The shadow must still confront the question of who he truly is and what kind of life he wants to live. His relationship with Xiao Ai remains complicated by the years of deception, regardless of his martial success. King Pei's response to the battle's outcome demonstrates the cold calculation that characterizes effective political leadership. The king's primary concern is not the personal cost to individuals like the shadow, but the strategic advantage to his kingdom. This perspective reflects the harsh realities of political power, where personal sacrifices are often necessary for larger goals. The real Commander Ziyu's fate provides another layer of resolution that must be addressed. His physical condition has not improved despite the shadow's success in battle. The victory he has long sought has been achieved by another person using his identity. This raises profound questions about the meaning of personal achievement and the nature of legacy. Zhang Yimou handles these complex resolutions with characteristic subtlety and restraint. Rather than providing simple answers to the moral and philosophical questions the film has raised, he allows viewers to contemplate the implications of the characters' choices and actions. The film's conclusion suggests that some conflicts cannot be fully resolved, but must be accepted and integrated into one's understanding of life. The final sequences of Shadow return to the intimate human relationships that have provided the emotional core of the story. The Shadow's interactions with Xiao Ai must now account for the truth about his identity and the years of deception that have defined their relationship. Zhang Yimou presents these moments with delicate sensitivity, recognizing the complexity of emotions involved for both characters. The film's treatment of forgiveness and redemption reflects mature understanding of human psychology and relationships. Characters cannot simply move forward as if years of deception had never occurred, but neither must they remain forever trapped by past mistakes and circumstances. The possibility of healing and new understanding emerges through honest confrontation with difficult truths. The political situation in PA also requires resolution following the dramatic events of the climax. The success of the Shadow's mission has implications for military strategy, diplomatic relations. King Pei must decide how to capitalize on this victory while managing the various factions and interests within his own kingdom. Zhang Yimou uses these final political machinations to reinforce his themes about the nature of power and leadership. Effective rulers must be pragmatic and sometimes ruthless in their decision-making, but they also must maintain the loyalty and support of their subjects. The balance between these competing demands requires constant vigilance and adaptation. The visual presentation of the film's conclusion maintains the distinctive monochromatic aesthetic while allowing for subtle shifts in mood and tone. The careful use of light and shadow creates different emotional atmospheres for different scenes, supporting the narrative without calling attention to the technique. This restraint demonstrates Zhang Yimou's confidence in his visual approach and his trust in the audience's ability to appreciate subtlety. The film's exploration of legacy and memory becomes particularly relevant in its final movements. The shadow has achieved victory and proven his martial skills, but he has done so while impersonating another person. The question of how history will remember these events and who will receive credit for the achievements reflects broader concerns about individual identity versus collective memory. Zhang Yimou suggests that the truth about personal identity and achievement may be less important than the positive outcomes that result from individual actions. The Shadow's deception has served a greater good, protecting P and its people from military defeat and political chaos. This utilitarian perspective provides one framework for evaluating the moral complexity of the story's events. The relationship between appearance and reality, which has been central to the film's thematic content throughout, receives its final exploration in the concluding sequences. Characters must decide whether to continue living with comfortable illusions or to embrace difficult truths about themselves and their relationships. These decisions will determine not only their immediate happiness but also their long-term psychological and emotional health. The cinematography in the final scenes maintains the high artistic standards established throughout the film. Each shot is carefully composed to support the emotional content of the scenes while contributing to the overall visual coherence of the work. The subtle variations in lighting and composition create different moods without breaking the aesthetic unity that has defined the viewing experience. The sound design and musical score continue to enhance the emotional impact of the conclusion without overwhelming the visual storytelling. The traditional Chinese instruments provide cultural authenticity, while the musical arrangements support the narrative rhythms and character development. The restraint shown in the audio elements demonstrates the same artistic discipline that characterizes every aspect of the production. Shadow stands as a remarkable achievement in contemporary cinema, combining spectacular visual artistry with sophisticated storytelling and deep thematic exploration. Zhang Yimou has created a work that functions simultaneously as historical epic, political thriller, martial arts showcase, and philosophical meditation. The film's distinctive monochromatic aesthetic serves not as a gimmick, but as an integral element of its artistic and thematic expression. The performances throughout the film deserve recognition for their subtlety and emotional depth. Deng Chao's dual role as both the Shadow and the real Commander Ziyu showcases remarkable range and technical skill. His ability to create two distinct characters who must appear identical to other characters while remaining distinguishable to the audience demonstrates masterful acting technique. Sun Lai's portrayal of Xiao Ai captures the complexity of a woman caught between loyalty and suspicion, love and betrayal. Her performance provides the emotional anchor for the film's exploration of personal relationships in the context of political deception. The supporting cast, including Zheng Kai as King Pei and Hu Jun as Yang Cang, contributes to the overall ensemble excellence that elevates the entire production. The production design and costume work create a visually coherent world that feels both historically grounded and artistically heightened. Every element of the physical environment supports the film's thematic concerns, while contributing to the distinctive aesthetic that makes Shadow immediately recognizable and memorable. The attention to detail in textures, patterns, and architectural elements demonstrates the high level of craftsmanship involved in the production. The martial arts choreography represents some of the finest work in the genre, combining spectacular physical action with meaningful character development and thematic significance. The fight sequences serve the story rather than overwhelming it, maintaining focus on the human drama while delivering the excitement and visual spectacle that audiences expect from martial arts cinema. Zhang Yimou's direction demonstrates complete mastery of the cinematic medium, using every available tool to serve his artistic vision. The pacing allows for both intimate character moments and spectacular action sequences without sacrificing coherence or emotional. The film's structure builds tension steadily toward its climactic confrontations while maintaining interest in the complex web of relationships and political intrigue that drive the plot. The thematic depth of Shadow places it among the most sophisticated martial arts films ever made. The exploration of identity, authenticity, loyalty, and political power resonates beyond the historical setting to address universal human concepts. The film asks difficult questions about the nature of self and the price of duty without providing easy answers or moral certainties. The cultural significance of Shadow extends beyond its entertainment value to its contribution to contemporary Chinese cinema. Zhang Yimou has created a work that honors traditional Chinese artistic forms while employing cutting-edge filmmaking techniques. The film demonstrates the continued vitality and relevance of classical Chinese themes in modern cinematic expression. The international reception of Shadow confirms its achievement as a work of art that transcends cultural boundaries. Audiences and critics worldwide have recognized the film's distinctive visual beauty and sophisticated storytelling. The universal themes, explored through the specifically Chinese historical context, demonstrate the power of cinema to create. The technical achievements of Shadow deserve recognition alongside its artistic merits. The cinematography, sound design, production design, and special effects work together seamlessly to create a fully realized cinematic world. The restraint and discipline shown in every technical element contribute to the film's overall artistic coherence and emotional impact. The influence of Shadow on subsequent filmmaking can already be seen in other directors' attempts to create similarly distinctive visual approaches to familiar genres. Zhang Yimou has demonstrated that audiences are hungry for innovative aesthetic experiences that challenge conventional approaches to cinematic storytelling. The film's success encourages continued experimentation and artistic risk-taking in commercial cinema. The legacy of Shadow will likely endure as an example of how traditional artistic forms can be revitalized through modern technology and contemporary sensibilities. Zhang Yimou has created a bridge between classical Chinese culture and modern international cinema that honors both traditions while creating something genuinely new and original. The film's exploration of the relationship between appearance and reality, the nature of identity, and the cost of loyalty raises questions that apply to contemporary life as much as to the historical period depicted. These universal concerns ensure the film's continued relevance for future generations of viewers. In conclusion, Shadow represents a pinnacle of achievement in contemporary cinema, combining spectacular visual artistry with profound thematic exploration and masterful storytelling technique. Zhang Yimou has created a work that satisfies on every level, from pure entertainment to deep philosophical reflection. The film stands as a testament to the continued power of cinema to inspire, challenge, and transform. The monochromatic visual approach that initially attracts viewers proves to be only the entry point into a rich and complex artistic experience that rewards multiple viewings and continued contemplation. Shadow is a film that reveals new layers of meaning and beauty with each encounter, establishing it as a true masterpiece of world cinema that will endure for generations to come. The intricate tapestry of Shadow invites those who dwell in its world to linger over each character's motivations, actions, and silent anxieties. The film's dense psychological core stems most markedly from the triangle lodged between the real Commander Ziyu, his double, and Xiao Ai. Delving deeper into these relationships, the audience sees how the gradual uncovering of truths yields a panorama not just of betrayal but of reluctant empathy, longing, and personal torment. As the days draw on, the physical convalescence of the true Ziyu becomes not a story of hope but a parable of the limits of human ambition. He is increasingly aware of his fading vigor. Within the stale chamber, sunlight sometimes creeps onto his pallid face, reminding him of the outside world he can no longer command. As he listens to his double's reports, there is a flicker of recognition that this other man has begun not just to inhabit his role, but to eclipse him in spirit, and perhaps integrity. He observes the Shadow not simply as a tool, but as a living echo of his own lost vigor, both a source of pride and a specter of obsolescence. Meanwhile, the Shadow's routine becomes less an act of mere impersonation and more a journey into self-realization. At first, every speech and gesture carries the weight of performance, but over weeks and months the line between role and self becomes increasingly undefined. The court begins to treat the double as the true commander, and in private, his own memories blur. Occasionally he recalls childhood in the quiet provinces, but more often his mind is filled with the battles and strategies of power. The burden of secrecy presses upon him in every interaction, engendering both detachment and a growing, almost painful sense of responsibility for the fate of the kingdom. Xiao Ai remains a fulcrum of emotional ambiguity. From early scenes of wary interaction, she evolves into a figure of profound complexity. Her suspicions about the man at her side, his shifting mannerisms, the unfamiliar rhythm of his breath, grow, but so too does her sympathy for his hidden suffering. When she glimpses moments of vulnerability or catches his furtive gestures, she senses that another soul lives within the familiar shell. Shadows flicker on the walls at dusk, and in those moments Xiao Ai's glances convey 1,000 questions she cannot voice. The political court thrives on such uncertainties, with counselors and generals moving carefully in the orbit of the supposed commander. Some sense a difference in their leader, speculating among themselves in half-whispers whether the trauma of defeat has irrevocably changed his character. There is a natural resistance to questioning authority, yet the uncertainty breeds both possibility and danger. General Tian, an old comrade of Ziyu, observes the new martial enthusiasm with cautious optimism, believing the prospect of reclaiming Jing city signals a return to Pei's former greatness. Others, more skeptical, wonder if they are being led into ruin by ambition masquerading as wisdom. King Pei, ever watchful, sits in the palace garden among blooming orchids, contemplating the double-edged nature of power. Each decision he makes is shaped by anxiety over how history will appraise his reign. The king's dialogue with the shadow is fraught with subtext, each probing question met with an answer measured to maintain the deception, each word a delicate maneuver in their ongoing game of strategic survival. The king studies the shadow's eyes, seeking the haunted look of a man who has returned from defeat, and at times glimpsing something altogether more resolute. The king vacillates between pride in this apparent new strength and unease that it may signal a threat to his own precarious authority. The campaign to retake Jing City is planned with obsessive attention to detail. The city, perched atop white cliffs and surrounded by sinewy rivers, becomes an obsession not only for its symbolic value but as a stage upon which the destinies of nations will be rewritten. The shadow gathers intelligence with his small cadre, studying the rhythms of Yang patrols, the topography of the land, and the morale of enemy troops. The planning room is a nexus of maps inked in elegant brushstrokes, models of city walls, markers indicating troop positions. Each simulation, each whispered suggestion from the court's tacticians, adds a new layer to the grand design. Training intensifies, with weapon masters drilling the warriors in the unusual umbrella blade technique. This fighting style, drawn from ancient texts, transforms ordinary shields into whirling, slicing instruments of both offense and defense. The visual spectacle of these training scenes is unmistakable, as dancers and new craftsmen fill the palace grounds with movement both fluid and purposeful. The camera lingers on the metallic sheen of blades spinning beneath misting rain, juxtaposing martial power with the transience of beauty. Here, Zhang Yimou's signature is evident. Violence is never separated from artistry, and every act of preparation is colored by an undercurrent of somber reflection. As the army assembles, the entire city of Pai pulses with anticipation and trepidation. Vendors at the market whisper of imminent war. Fortune-tellers cast lots for the fate of the nation, and the old recall the carnage of prior battles. Citizens watch the palace gates, where soldiers march out in silent, ordered ranks, each man and woman shrouded in garments echoing the film's palette of ashen grays and silvers. On the night before departure, Xiao Ai seeks out the shadow. Xiao Ai seeks out the shadow. Their conversation in a lantern-lit chamber is thick with implication and half-confession. She asks about his fears, and for a rare moment, he permits himself honesty, confessing uncertainty about the days ahead. Xiao Ai, torn by loyalty to the memory of her husband and a stirring affection for the man before her, takes his hand. In the stillness, the weight of all their secrets presses down, yet for an instant, there is solace in human contact. The journey to Jing City unfolds across landscapes as varied as the psychological terrain of the characters. Rainy mountain passes, roaring rivers, and silent forests serve both as obstacles for the army and as canvases for the film's dazzling visual compositions. Along the way, the shadow inspects his troops, hears supplications from local villagers, and witnesses, in moments of quietude, the beauty and suffering of the land he is sworn to defend. As the army draws near to Jing City, anticipation and dread mount. Messengers bring word of Yang Cang's preparations, and spies relay updates about the rival court, where the general is celebrated for valor and feared for merciless efficiency. The shadow, ever disciplined, masks his anxiety behind the lessons of Ziyu. He studies the opposing camp at dawn, observing banners unfurl in morning light and hearing, from afar, the drilling of enemy troops. The siege itself is a set piece of rare craftsmanship and intensity. Zhang Yimou constructs the sequence as both a physical assault on stone walls and an emotional reckoning for every principle. The rain that falls incessantly blurs vision, deadens sound, and covers the clamor of battle with its mournful shroud. The soldiers of Pei deploy their umbrella blades, advancing in coordinated formations. The choreography of combat, shields spinning, blades meeting in arcs of silver, resembles a ballet of both horror and exaltation. Within the chaos, the shadow leads a small force through a hidden tunnel, infiltrating the heart of Jing City. Here, tension escalates as the defenders rally, and the shadow's men face ambush and sudden death at every turn. Exhaustion and injury mount, but the shadow moves with relentless determination, memory, and instinct, now indistinguishable in the heat of crisis. The confrontation with Yang Cang is staged as the ultimate test, not merely of physical courage, but of existential will. Yang Cang, massive and unyielding, embodies all the obstacles the shadow has faced: oppression, expectation, and the shadow of another man's ambitions. The duel is prolonged, brutal, and yet strangely beautiful. Each blow struck resonates with the life stories of both combatants, each cut and parry echoing with questions of legacy and legitimacy. In the end, it is not brute strength but cunning and innovation, learned through years of living another's life, that delivers the advantage. The shadow employs the unorthodox techniques only he has mastered, felling his opponent with a combination of improvisation and discipline. As Yang Cang falls, the walls of Jing City echo, with a silence more profound than any roar of victory. The cost of triumph is immediately apparent. The shadow stands victorious but battered, his body marked by wounds deeper than flesh. On the battlements, rain-seeped and surrounded by the dying and wounded, he gazes out over the city that now must reckon with its new masters. Soldiers kneel in exhausted relief. The banners of Pei are hoisted, but celebration rings hollow for those who have witnessed too much. Meanwhile, back at Pei, the real Ziyu is informed of the victory. Alone and diminished, he greets the news, not with triumph, but with a quiet, almost mournful acceptance. He understands that his legacy now belongs to another, that Pei owes its continued existence not to his arm, but to the one he forged in secret. In this recognition, there is both sorrow and a strange, stoic pride. Xiao Ai, upon hearing the news, is beset by conflicting emotions. The man she has come to care for has achieved the impossible, but the truth of his identity remains uncertain. She moves through the palace, seeing her reflection merge with shadows on polished floors, feeling the dual weight of love and loss. The court erupts in a flurry of activity as the army returns victorious. The king sits in regal attire, preparing for the ceremony that will commemorate the retaking of Jing City and reassert the authority of Pai. Advisors draft proclamations. Scholars prepare new court histories, and workers decorate the public squares in anticipation of widespread celebration. During the reception, the shadow stands before the king and assembled dignitaries. Every eye is upon him, some with admiration, some with suspicion. The king offers rewards and praise while probing delicately with questions that, on their surface, seem merely congratulatory. Underneath, they are carefully designed traps, each one testing the shadow's ability to maintain his role. The double's responses are measured, inscrutable, and for a moment, the tension threatens to tear through the carefully constructed illusion. In a private moment after the festivities, Xiao Ai confronts the shadow. She asks, with a voice both tender and resolute, whether there is any possibility for honesty between them. The shadow, voice shaking, reveals his origins and the circumstances of his life. The confession is met not with anger but with a deep, aching sadness, a recognition of the cruelty inflicted by fate and ambition alike. For Xiao Ai, the realization that love might persist even in the aftermath of deception is both liberating and tragic. King Pei, meanwhile, is not content to leave matters at a simple restoration of order. He recognizes that the legend of the returned commander has become a potent tool for political unity and intimidation of rivals. Yet he also knows that secrets rarely remain hidden. The king consults with his oldest advisors, weighing whether to rid himself of the double or to bind him yet more tightly to the royal cause. The decision is left deliberately ambiguous, and in this ambiguity, Zhang Yimou captures the perennial tension faced by all rulers. That power is never absolute, and that every victory sows the seeds for future descent. The shadow himself finds no peace in victory. The face he sees in the mirror is at once his and not his own. The life he has lived as another man has given him status and purpose, but at the cost of authentic relationship and self-knowledge. Even as the people of Pai celebrate him as a hero, he walks the halls of the palace with a loneliness greater than any he has known before. Into this existential vacuum, Xiao Ai enters with words of comfort and understanding. Their relationship, now relieved of pretense, is both fragile and honest. They spend evenings tracing the outline of their shared pasts, searching for what, if anything, remains untouched by lies. In these moments, the only real currency is trust, painstakingly rebuilt from the shards of betrayal. The film closes with scenes of the city at dawn, the streets scrubbed clean by rain, soldiers at ease, merchants reopening their stalls. The camera moves slowly through the palace gardens where petals drift on wind, crossing silent chambers where the real commander lies asleep. The cycle of deception and revelation, suffering and grace, continues undefined. Critically, Shadow's legacy lies not only in its story but in the manner of its telling. Zhang Yimou's creative choices, from monochromatic visuals to the overwhelming consonance of music and image, transform the ordinary into the mythic. Each shot lingers like an ink wash, etching each silent glance loaded with paradox. The artistry extends into every department. Production designers who spent months crafting historically nuanced costumes and sets, swordsmiths who consulted ancient manuals, and composers who measured each note against the emotional turbulence of the narrative. Behind the scenes, actors immersed themselves in months of rigorous training. Deng Chao in particular had to master both the emotional duality of his role and the physical choreography necessary for the film's complex fight sequences. Sun Li, equally, performed her character's journey through subtle changes in movement, posture, and gaze, embodying the full range of disillusionment and hope with remarkable economy. All through the production, Zhang Yimou's guiding principle was a devotion to honesty in the midst of illusion. He kept the cast in character between takes, encouraged improvisational moments in otherwise tightly scripted scenes, and often rolled camera through rehearsals to capture the sudden poetry of unplanned interactions. Interviews with the crew reveal a set atmosphere charged with intensity, every member aware of their participation in something singular. Critical and audience reception was swift and enthusiastic. At festivals, the film was greeted with standing ovations, praised for its visual bravura, and dissected for its philosophical rigor. Scholars wrote of Shadow's meditation on statecraft and selfhood, noting parallels between the historical period depicted and the uncertainties of contemporary political life. Cultural commentators noted how Shadow contributed to a renaissance in Chinese martial arts cinema. The film's return to ink brush aesthetics nodded toward the grand tradition of Shanshui painting, yet the filmmaking was unmistakably modern, unafraid to combine digital compositing with practical effects. The umbrella blade motif inspired discussions of symbolism in weapon design, and was later echoed in fashion and pop art throughout East Asia. The dialogue around the film extended into questions of gender, as Xiao Ai emerged not just as a supporting character but as a pivotal agent in the drama's resolution. Her refusal to be simply deceived or discarded offered a nuanced portrait of female agency in environments shaped predominantly by audience members, especially women, responded to her struggle to assert dignity and compassion under impossible circumstances. Internationally, Shadow challenged Western perceptions of wuxia as a genre, offering a story less about external mastery of the body than internal mastery of will and moral clarity. Viewers from diverse backgrounds found points of connection with the Shadow's search for belonging and meaning, even as the political context remained particular to Chinese history. The impact of Shadow could be felt in art and popular culture, with visual motifs reappearing in contemporary dance, fashion runways, and fine art exhibitions. The monochromatic style, once considered a risk, became a touchstone for other filmmakers, seeking a harmonious blend of tradition and experimentation. Years after its release, the film continues to provoke analysis and admiration. Essays are penned about its layering of narrative, its ambiguity, and its vision of identity as continually negotiated rather than fixed. Rather than fixed. Film schools show shadow to illustrate the art of visual storytelling, how atmosphere can be generated by the interplay of texture, movement, and restraint. Among cinephiles, the film's reputation has only grown. New viewers discover it as a revelation, often describing their initial viewing as akin to stumbling upon a lost work of calligraphy or a forgotten philosophical treatise. Online forums debate the precise meaning of certain scenes, the ethics of the Shadow's final choices, and the technical brilliance of Zhang Yimou's direction. For those who return to Shadow repeatedly, the film never feels quite the same. Each viewing reveals new resonances, perhaps a gesture previously overlooked, the shift of color in a pool of rainwater, the micro-expression that betrays a character's second thoughts. This capacity for renewal is, perhaps, Zhang Yimou's ultimate gift to the audience, a work of art that both withholds and reveals, shadow and light interleave for those willing to look beyond the surface. The legend of Pei lives on, not in the unbroken rule of a king or the flawless triumph of a hero, but in the hearts of people changed by the intertwining of truth, lies, sacrifice, and love. This at last is the balm and the burden of the Shadow, a story without easy answers, as inexhaustible as the play of ink across a scroll, as enduring as memory itself. Long after the final echoes of battle have faded from the stone courtyards of Pei, the story of Shadow persists. In the kingdom's lore and among the storytellers that gather in taverns or on city corners, the legend of the faceless hero takes on a life all its own. The ordinary people know little of the chamber-bound true commander or the precise mechanisms of the double's rise, but the tale they tell is one of sacrifice, uncanny skill, and the inescapable pull of fate. Young warriors look to the exploits of the Shadow as a model of loyalty and cunning, not knowing the depth of sorrow and ambiguity buried beneath each victory. In the aftermath of his publicly celebrated triumph, the Shadow navigates life unsettlingly suspended between two identities. Publicly, he retains the mantle of commander, steering the kingdom's defense and strategy with the measured hand he learned through arduous imitation and immersion. Within the shaded corridors of the palace, however, he is a man divided. Each interaction reminds him of the toll secrecy takes, not simply on himself, but on those around him. The air is thick with unspoken suspicions, covert whispers in moonlit corridors, the sidelong glances of servants who see more than they reveal. He is caught between continuing the facade for the greater good and the gnawing urge to lay down his burdens and claim a self of his own making. Xiao Ai, quietly persisting in her daily routines, finds herself wrestling with a similar burden. Now acquainted with the totality of the deception and the pain it caused, she is left to decide whether love founded in imitation is nonetheless real or forever contaminated by betrayal. Their shared moments are colored by this unease. Kindness persists between them, as does trust built on moments of sincerity, but the dividing line between old wounds and new beginnings remains faint. Occasionally she finds herself watching the Shadow as he sleeps, searching for glimpses of the person he has become, separate from the shadow of the commander. Her forgiveness comes gradually, not as a proclamation, but as a series of quiet choices, a task as ongoing as the maintenance of the kingdom itself. Within the court, political ripples from the campaign's outcome continue to spread. The king presides over a realm now united by victory but restless with ambition. Advisors offer competing visions for Pei's future. Some see the restoration of Jing City as a chance to pursue more aggressive expansion. Others argue for consolidation, fearing the kingdom's resources have been stretched thin by conflict. Each faction seeks the Shadow's approval, believing his influence with the king is substantial, and his own position precariously secure. The Shadow, bemused by this ironic twist, listens carefully, understanding at last the isolation of power. Unbeknownst to most, the real Commander Ziyu remains confined, weakened further, not just by injuries, but by the erosion of purpose. For him, time unfolds in moments of aching reflection. Occasionally he summons his double for a private exchange, alternating between pride at the role his student has played and resentment at being supplanted. These conversations are fraught, consisting of more silence than words, yet they are necessary. A transfer of wisdom, perhaps, or simply a slow release of old rage. As his condition deteriorates, he becomes a shadow in the truest sense, felt everywhere, visible hardly at all, haunting the margins of decisions made in his name. The kingdom of Pei itself begins to change under the steady hand of its adopted champion. Familiar customs persist, but whispers of innovation are heard at court. The shadow, remembering years of listening rather than commanding, proves unusually open to new ideas. He creates space for younger soldiers and advisors to speak. Implements reforms in military training, inspired by his own unconventional education, and encourages dialogue between the city's council and rural leaders. This openness is met with resistance by those invested in tradition, but it sows the seeds of limited renewal, even as it exposes him to further suspicion from conservative quarters. All the while, Zhang Yimou's visions of landscape continue to punctuate the unfolding drama. The rivers that once marked the boundaries of war now serve as trade arteries, and city gates that echoed with the approach of martial columns welcome goods and travelers. Yet peace is anything but absolute. Border skirmishes flare briefly, and internecine plots emerge in Pei's underbelly. The skill of the shadow as a strategist is tested repeatedly, not just on open battlefields but in the negotiation chambers and midnight rendezvous of would-be usurpers. Culturally, the restoration of Jing City becomes the subject of poetry, music, and painting. Artists commemorate the return with vast murals in the style of ink scrolls, capturing processions, sieges, and the ambiguous visage of the commander, who is both legend and mystery. Some works focus on the martial spectacle, while others delve into the quieter aftermath. The widows who mourn, the children who play on battle-scarred fields, the rituals held in memory of the fallen. The anonymity of the shadow becomes a central motif, face partly obscured, posture blending with the night, at once celebrated and unreachable. The life of the court shuffles forward with its own peculiar rhythm, interrupted periodically by festivals, diplomatic visits, and the solemn passing of seasons. Winter brings an introspective quiet to Pei. Snow settles on slate rooftops and the palace gardens are shrouded in icy stillness. During one such winter, a minor plague threatens the city, and the response is coordinated efficiently by the shadow, relying on networks of healers and village elders forged during the campaign. This interlude, though not filled with martial tension, reveals the slow maturing of his role from warrior to steward. Throughout all these shifts, the relationship between the shadow and Xiao Ai matures. They occupy private spaces together, reading ancient texts, walking the length of the palace's hidden gardens, discussing matters of philosophy, memory, and justice. Slowly, the wounds left by deception begin to close. They never adopt the easy affection of legends, but instead build a life marked by mutual respect and shared sorrows. In rare moments of joy, laughter echoes down stone corridors, a fragile bulwark against the weight of their shared past. In the realm beyond Pei's walls, news of the kingdom's stability and military prowess spreads. Allied rulers arrive for parley, bearing gifts and summons for alliance. Some seek friendship, others leverage to curb Pei's rising power. The shadow is called upon to act as both diplomat and enforcer, leveraging a reputation both earned and inherited. As he negotiates, he must balance competing truths, the needs of his people, the dignity of former enemies, and the personal cost of perpetual vigilance. One of the film's crowning achievements lies in its rendering of these negotiations not as static exchanges, but as living theater. Every gesture, every offering of wine or exchange of scrolls is an act laden with meaning, both sides remembering battles fought and losses endured. The courtly language is precise, every phrase calculated to give nothing yet promise everything. And here again, the shadow's empathy reveals itself in careful listening rather than grand pronouncements. Several times, scenes play out in the delicate flicker of lantern light, words exchanged in whispers backed by measured silences, showing that sometimes the greatest dramas play out in quietude rather than chaos. The artisans and craftsmen of Pei experience a mild renaissance during these years. Inspired by the high drama and sobering aftermath of war, they develop new forms in music and poetry, drawing upon the theme of duality. Lute players compose slow, lingering pieces, echoing the film's score. Scholars debate the philosophical implications of the shadow story. How much of our character is inherited? How much craft? What is the moral cost of substitution? And does the nobility of an act erase the ambiguity of its inception? Young students seek new mentorship in the city's academies, hoping to learn not only martial skill but wisdom and ambiguity. Some look for the shadow, eager for a glimpse or a word of advice, though he rarely indulges this curiosity. Instead, he charges older priests and former war veterans with educating the next generation. He believes a leader should never be the center of a cult of personality, but rather the cultivator of a culture where new heroes may arise. In time, rumors surface of those in distant lands attempting to replicate Pei's military innovations. Traders bring stories of umbrella blade demonstrations in far island kingdoms, while wandering martial artists try to develop their own techniques inspired by news of the Shadow's unorthodox warfare. Some commercialize the story, selling painted scrolls or staged performances to audiences hungering for spectacle. Politically, cracks begin to show in the unity enforced by victory. Older generals, increasingly aware of their waning influence, form quiet alliances, seeking either to retake control or undermine reforms they deem dangerous. At court, trusted advisors are sometimes discovered to have double loyalties. The Shadow, forced again into the habits of suspicion and self-doubt, must navigate a labyrinth of intrigue, one not built of city walls but of shifting allegiances and personal ambition. Now and again, emissaries arrive bearing coded messages from the Yang Kingdom. Some are overtures for peace, others veiled threats or reminders of unresolved disputes from the past. Some are overtures for peace from the past. The Shadow answers these challenges with the same blend of caution and empathy that has become his hallmark. He senses, in the broader world, the same dynamics that have ruled his own life. The struggle to reconcile inherited identities with the demands of conscience and justice. Late in the film, Zhang Yimou offers a meditation on mortality and legacy through a lyrical sequence set at the real commander's deathbed. Ziyu, at last spent, calls for Xiao Ai and the Shadow. Their meeting is unadorned, marked less by grand confessions than quiet acknowledgement. He relinquishes the trappings of power, symbolic tokens, a favorite blade, a scroll on which he has written his final stratagems. To the Shadow, he offers neither blessing nor curse, simply the truth that every role, no matter how skillfully performed, must one day be put aside. This moment is deeply cinematic. The chamber is lit only by waning candlelight, shadows cast along the cracked walls, rain tapping at the window frame. Mourners gather silently outside. The ceremony itself is brief. Mourning is public, but grief, as always in Pei, is private and largely unspoken. The Shadow grieves not just for a master or a rival, but for the lost possibility of a life lived in full, unshaded by another's destiny. The king, grown older and more lordly, presides over a palace that has weathered as much political turbulence as war itself. He marks the commander's passing with solemn ritual, recognizing both the necessity of maintaining myth and the human costs behind each legend crafted for the sake of the state. The king offers words of praise. In the waning chapters, the Shadow comes closest to resolving the inner conflict that has defined him. Freed in some sense by the death of the man he once impersonated, he reflects on how the years of pretense forged within him a capacity for compassion, adaptability, and a new vision for Pei. His relationship with Xiao Ai turns gentle, marked by routines and rituals unremarkable to outsiders, but deeply significant to those who have survived so many storms. They spend evenings in the garden, discussing the changing of seasons and the fragile continuity of peace. As the borders of Pei are secured, the Shadow retires from public command, ceding official power but retained in the kingdom's memory as a living advisor. In his later years, he travels the countryside, seeking wisdom from old monks, teaching martial arts to orphans, and mediating disputes between fractious villages. He writes his own scrolls, not of political stratagem or martial exploits, but of the human heart, its resilience and frailty, the cost of ambition, the value of honesty hard won. The film's final act finds meaning in these quieter moments. It is no longer the clangor of steel or the thunder of armies that dominate, but small acts of restoration, the repair of an old bridge, the planting of a sapling, the adoption of strays. The legacy of the Shadow is not simply written in the histories or sung by bards, but embedded in the lives, improved by the ripple effects of choices made during times of upheaval. Artistic motifs from the earlier parts of the film resurface in these closing scenes. The monochrome palette remains, but is tinged now and then by the softened gold of sunset, the faint green of early spring shoots, suggesting a world no longer defined exclusively by the binaries of victory and defeat, loyalty and betrayal. The musical score, which throughout has wound melancholy themes with moments of hope, settles into a quiet, contemplative rhythm. Tales of the shadow endure long beyond his disappearance from public life. In the next generation's retellings, fact and romance interweave. Some say he returned to the peasants and died an anonymous death. Others insist he reappeared in some distant court, advising kings under a false name. Still others believe that every true martial artist carries within them something of his legacy, a reminder of the uncertain space between imitation and truth. The enduring impact of the film Shadow, both within its world and on global audiences, lies in its layering of meanings, its synthesis of image and action, and its faith in the richness of ambiguity. Zhang Yimou's vision is a testament to the power of cinema to dignify those caught between roles, to find beauty in sorrow, and to offer peace not as a final state, but as a process of reconciliation and rebuilding. No identity is fixed, no destiny immutable, and in the endless shifting between light and shadow, one finds not confusion, but the possibility for growth, forgiveness, and the reclamation of self. The kingdom of Pei, with its silent courtyards, bustling markets, and patient rivers, continues, carrying forward the stories of all who have passed through its gates, commanders, kings, shadowy doubles, and the bonds they forged in times of peril and peace. The enduring fascination with Shadow extends far beyond its immediate narrative boundaries, reaching into the very foundations of what cinema can accomplish as an art form. Zhang Yimou's achievement transcends the conventional limits of the martial arts genre, creating a work that functions simultaneously as historical drama, philosophical treatise, and visual poem. The film's influence on subsequent filmmakers becomes evident in the years following its release, as directors across cultures attempt to replicate its distinctive aesthetic approach while grappling with similar themes of identity, authenticity, and the cost of power. In academic circles, Shadow generates extensive scholarly discussion about the nature of performance, both within the narrative and a cinematic medium. Film theorists examine how the central conceit of the double reflects the very nature of acting itself, where performers must inhabit roles that may be fundamentally foreign to their own experiences and personalities. The Shadow's gradual transformation into Ziyu mirrors the process by which actors become their characters, raising questions about where performance ends and genuine becoming begins. The film's treatment of memory proves particularly rich for. Throughout the story, characters struggle with the reliability of their own recollections and perceptions. The Shadow's memories of his original identity gradually fade as he inhabits Ziyu's life more completely, suggesting that memory itself is less fixed than commonly assumed. Xiao Ai's memories of her husband become complicated by her experiences with his double, creating a palimpsest of overlapping impressions that challenge simple notions of truth and falsehood. Zhang Yimou's directorial choices throughout Shadow demonstrate a mature understanding of how visual elements can carry narrative weight without explicit exposition. The recurring motif of reflections in water, polished surfaces, and mirrors reinforces themes of duality and uncertain identity. Characters frequently appear doubled in these reflective surfaces, their images sometimes clear, and sometimes distorted, suggesting the fluidity of self-perception and the way others see us. The film's exploration of political power. The relationship between King Pei and the Shadow reflects eternal dynamics between rulers and their subordinates, where loyalty and manipulation intertwine in complex ways. The king's gradual awareness of the deception creates opportunities for him to exploit the situation for his own advantage, demonstrating how those in power often benefit from the sacrifices of others while maintaining plausible deniability about their knowledge of those sacrifices. The treatment of warfare in Shadow differs significantly from contemporary action cinema's emphasis on spectacle over consequence. Zhang Yimou presents combat as both beautiful and terrible, never allowing viewers to forget the human cost of violence, even as they appreciate the artistic choreography of the fight scenes. The aftermath of battles receives as much attention as the conflicts themselves, showing the wounded, the grieving, and the long process of recovery that follows any significant confrontation. The film's production history reveals the extraordinary attention to detail that characterized every aspect of its creation. Costume designers spent months researching historical garments and fabrics, working to create clothing that would photograph effectively in the monochromatic palette while remaining authentic to the period. The challenge of making visually interesting costumes without relying on color required innovative approaches to texture, pattern, and silhouette. Set designers faced similar challenges in creating environments that would support the film's distinctive visual approach. Traditional Chinese architecture provided the foundation, but every element had to be carefully considered for how it would appear in the desaturated color scheme. The interplay between light and shadow became crucial, with designers working closely with the cinematography team to ensure that each location would provide appropriate visual drama without overwhelming the performances. Deng Chao's preparation for his dual role required him to develop distinct physical vocabularies for both the shadow and the real Ziyu. The bedridden commander moves with the careful economy of someone managing constant pain, while the shadow's physicality reflects years of disciplined training and the hyper-awareness of someone constantly maintaining a performance. Sun Li's preparation focused on the subtle art of conveying suspicion and growing awareness without resorting to obvious dramatic gestures. Her character's journey from trust through doubt to understanding required precise calibration of expression and body language. The actress worked with movement coaches to develop ways of showing Xiao Ai's internal conflict through posture, gesture, and the rhythm of her interaction. The fight choreography in Shadow represents a synthesis of traditional Chinese martial arts with contemporary cinematic technique. The umbrella blade fighting style required extensive research into historical weapons and combat methods, combined with innovative approaches to staging that would serve the film's thematic concerns. Each combat sequence was designed to reveal character as much as demonstrate skill, with the protagonists' fightings reflecting their personalities and internal conflict. The film's editing rhythm supports its contemplative approach to storytelling. Rather than relying on rapid cutting to create excitement, Zhang Yimou and his editors allow scenes to breathe, giving viewers time to absorb visual details and emotional subtleties. This pacing reflects traditional Chinese narrative forms, where meaning often emerges through accumulated detail rather than dramatic revelation. The sound design of Shadow creates an immersive audio environment that supports the visual storytelling without calling attention to itself. Natural sounds like rain, wind, and the rustle of fabric provide texture to scenes, while the careful placement of silence creates moments of heightened tension or emotional reflection. The integration of traditional Chinese instruments with contemporary recording techniques produces a soundtrack that feels both historically grounded and cinematically immediate. Cultural critics have noted how Shadow engages with specifically Chinese concepts of honor, duty, and social harmony while exploring themes that resonate across cultural boundaries. The film's treatment of the individual's relationship to society reflects Confucian ideals about personal sacrifice for collective good, while also questioning the human cost of such sacrifices. This dual perspective allows international audiences to appreciate the story's cultural specificity while finding universal relevance in its themes. The film's reception in different international markets reveals how cultural context shapes interpretation of its themes and imagery. Western critics often emphasize the individual psychological drama of the Shadow's identity crisis, while East Asian reviewers frequently focused on the political implications. These varying interpretations demonstrate the richness of Zhang Yimou's achievement in creating a work that operates successfully on multiple levels. Technical innovations developed for Shadow influence subsequent film productions, both in China and internationally. The methods used to achieve the monochromatic look while preserving visual interest inspired other directors to experiment with limited color palettes. The integration of practical effects with digital enhancement set new standards for creating believable fantasy environments without overwhelming the human elements of the story. The film's exploration of mentor-student relationships extends beyond the central dynamic between Ziyu and the Shadow to encompass broader questions about how knowledge and skill are transmitted across generations. The Shadow's education in combat, politics, and social behavior represents a compressed version of traditional apprenticeship systems, where learning occurs through observation, imitation, and gradual assumption of responsibility. Zhang Yimou's handling of romantic elements in Shadow demonstrates sophisticated understanding of how love functions under conditions of deception and political pressure. The relationship between the shadow and Xiao Ai develops against a background of fundamental dishonesty, yet genuine affection emerges through their shared experiences and mutual vulnerability. This complexity reflects real-world relationship dynamics, while serving the film's larger themes about authenticity and performance. The film's treatment of aging and physical decline, through the character of the real Ziyu, provides counterpoint to the physical prowess displayed in the action sequences. The bedridden commander's gradual weakening serves as a reminder of human mortality and the temporary nature of all power and achievement. His relationship with his healthy double becomes a meditation on legacy and the ways we seek to extend our influence beyond our physical limitations. The political implications of shadow extend to contemporary discussions about leadership and governance. The king's manipulation of the situation for his own advantage reflects timeless patterns in political behavior, while the shadow's gradual assumption of real authority suggests questions about legitimacy and the sources of political power. These themes resonate with current concerns about authenticity in public life and the relationship between image and substance in political leadership. The film's visual metaphors operate on multiple levels simultaneously. The recurring imagery of water, both as rain and in reflective surfaces, suggests themes of renewal, cleansing, and the fluidity of identity. The careful interplay between light and shadow throughout the film reinforces its central concerns with hidden truth and surface appearance. These visual elements work subconsciously on viewers, create emotion consciously on viewers. Behind the scenes, the collaborative process that created Shadow involved extensive consultation with historical advisors, martial arts experts, and cultural consultants. Zhang Yimou's commitment to authenticity extended to details that might never be noticed by casual viewers, but which contribute to the overall sense of believable world-building that supports the story's more fantastical elements. The film's influence on contemporary Chinese cinema extends beyond mere aesthetic imitation to encompass broader approaches to storytelling and thematic development. Younger directors have adopted Zhang Yimou's integration of visual beauty with serious thematic content, creating works that satisfy both commercial and artistic ambitions. This influence represents a maturation of Chinese cinema as it develops confidence in its ability to speak to international audiences while remaining rooted in specifically Chinese cultural traditions. International film festivals continue to screen Shadow years after its release, using it as an example of how genre filmmaking can transcend its conventional boundaries to create art that endures beyond its initial commercial success. The film's combination of spectacular entertainment with philosophical depth provides a model for how commercial cinema can maintain artistic integrity without sacrificing popular appeal. The legacy of Shadow extends into other art forms as well. Contemporary painters have drawn inspiration from its visual approach, creating works that explore similar themes through monochromatic palettes and emphasis on texture and light. Musicians have composed pieces inspired by the film's integration of traditional and contemporary elements. Fashion designers have referenced its costume work in creating clothing that combines historical inspiration with modern sensibilities. Educational institutions now include Shadow in curricula, ranging from film studies to philosophy to political science. The film's rich thematic content provides material for discussions about identity, ethics, power. Its technical achievements serve as case studies in cinematography, production design, and the integration of various filmmaking disciplines to create unified artistic vision. The enduring appeal of Shadow lies partly in its refusal to provide simple answers to the complex questions it raises. Rather than resolving its moral ambiguities through conventional narrative closure, the film acknowledges that some questions cannot. This sophistication reflects Zhang Yimou's maturity as an artist and his confidence in his audience's ability to appreciate complexity and nuance. Critical reassessment of Shadow continues to reveal new layers of meaning and technique. Recent scholarly articles have examined its treatment of class dynamics, its use of space and architecture to reinforce thematic content, and its place within the broader tradition of Chinese historical cinema. These ongoing analyses demonstrate the film's richness and its capacity to reward repeated viewing and study. The film's exploration of sacrifice and its consequences resonates particularly strongly in contemporary discussions about social responsibility and individual agency. The Shadow's willingness to subordinate his own identity for the greater good raises questions about the limits of such sacrifice and the moral obligations of those who benefit from others. These themes have acquired additional relevance in an era of global challenges, requiring collective action and individual sacrifice. Zhang Yimou's achievement in Shadow represents a culmination of decades of artistic development and cultural exploration. The film synthesizes techniques and themes from his earlier works, while demonstrating new levels of visual sophistication and narrative complexity. It stands as both a summation of his artistic journey and a foundation for future creative exploration. The international success of Shadow has contributed to broader recognition of Chinese cinema's artistic achievements and cultural perspectives. The film serves as cultural ambassador, introducing global audiences to Chinese historical traditions, philosophical concepts, and aesthetic sensibilities. This cultural exchange enriches international cinema by expanding the range of stories and approaches available to filmmakers worldwide. Technical analysis of Shadow continues to inspire innovation in cinematography and visual effects. The methods developed to achieve its distinctive look have been adapted and refined for use in other productions, contributing to the ongoing evolution of cinematic technique. Film schools study its integration of practical and digital effects as a model for achieving spectacular results while maintaining artistic coherence. The film's treatment of truth and deception has acquired additional resonance in an era of concerns about misinformation and the manipulation of public perception. The Shadow's life of performance and the various characters' struggles to discern reality from appearance reflect contemporary anxieties about authenticity in public discourse and the challenge of maintaining truth in complex political environments. Shadow's exploration of the relationship between individual identity and social role speaks to ongoing debates about personal authenticity versus social expectations. The protagonist's journey from willing imposter to reluctant leader reflects tensions many people experience between their private selves and their public personas. This universality helps explain the film's continued relevance across diverse cultural contexts. The artistic legacy of Shadow extends to its influence on approaches to historical filmmaking. Zhang Yimou's integration of historical accuracy with artistic interpretation provides a model for how filmmakers can respect the past while creating works that speak to contemporary concerns. This approach has inspired other directors to explore historical subjects with similar sophistication and cultural sensitivity. In the years since its release, Shadow has become a touchstone for discussions about the possibilities and responsibilities of commercial filmmaking. Its success demonstrates that audiences are hungry for intelligent, visually sophisticated entertainment that respects their capacity for understanding complexity. This lesson continues to influence producers and directors seeking to create works that satisfy both artistic and commercial ambitions. The continuing scholarly and critical attention paid to Shadow reflects its achievement in creating a work that operates successfully on multiple levels simultaneously. As political allegory, philosophical meditation, visual poem, and spectacular entertainment, the film offers something for virtually every type of viewer while maintaining coherent artistic vision throughout. This multifaceted appeal ensures its continued relevance and influence in years to come. The philosophical underpinnings of Shadow reveal themselves most clearly in its treatment of the ancient Chinese concept of the mandate of heaven, the idea that legitimate rule derives from moral authority rather than mere force or inheritance. Throughout the film, Zhang Yimou interrogates this concept through the lens of his characters, actions, and motivations. The Shadow's assumption of command authority without official sanction raises questions about what constitutes legitimate leadership. His effectiveness in battle and governance suggests that moral character and competence may matter more than formal titles or bloodlines. This exploration extends to the broader question of whether performance can become reality through sustained commitment and authentic engagement. The Shadow begins as an impostor driven by loyalty to his master, but his genuine care for the people of Pei and his thoughtful approach to leadership gradually transform him into a legitimate ruler in everything but name. Zhang Yimou suggests that authenticity emerges through action rather than declaration, through consistent behavior rather than inherited position. The film's treatment of memory and identity draws heavily on Buddhist concepts of the impermanence of the self. The Shadow's gradual loss of his original identity parallels Buddhist teachings about the illusory nature of fixed selfhood. As he becomes more completely Ziyu, he experiences what Buddhist philosophy would describe as the dissolution of ego boundaries. This spiritual dimension adds depth to what could otherwise be read as simply a story of political intrigue and personal sacrifice. Zhang Yimou's visual style throughout Shadow reflects traditional Chinese aesthetic principles, particularly the concept of negative space and the importance of what is not shown as much as what is revealed. The monochromatic palette forces viewers to focus on composition, texture, and the subtle interplay of light and shadow, rather than being distracted by color. This approach mirrors classical Chinese painting techniques, where empty spaces on the canvas are considered as important as areas filled with brushstrokes. The film's sound design incorporates principles of traditional Chinese music, where silence and restraint are valued as highly as sound and flourish. The spaces between notes in the musical score create tension and atmosphere, while the careful placement of ambient sounds draws attention to specific emotional or narrative moments. This sonic restraint supports the visual restraint of the monochromatic palette, creating an overall aesthetic that values subtlety over spectacle. The political dynamics explored in Shadow reflect deep understanding of Chinese historical patterns of governance and rebellion. The relationship between the king and his military commanders echoes recurring themes in Chinese history, where successful generals often posed potential threats to imperial authority. The Shadow's loyalty to the crown, despite his growing power, represents an idealized version of the loyal minister. The film's treatment of warfare reflects traditional Chinese strategic thinking, particularly concepts derived from Sun Tzu's Art of War. The emphasis on deception, the importance of understanding one's enemy, and the value of achieving victory through superior strategy rather than brute force all reflect classical Chinese military philosophy. The Shadow's success against Yang comes not through overwhelming power, but through innovative. The character development throughout Shadow demonstrates Zhang Yimou's sophisticated understanding of how people change under extreme circumstances. The Shadow's transformation from reluctant imposter to confident leader occurs gradually through a series of small choices and accumulated experiences. This organic character growth feels psychologically authentic while serving the film's thematic purposes about the nature of identity and leadership. The film's exploration of love and loyalty under conditions of deception provides rich material for analyzing human relationships. Xiao Ai's gradual recognition of her husband's replacement creates a complex emotional situation where love, duty, and self-preservation conflict. Her ultimate acceptance of the Shadow reflects not simple forgiveness but a mature understanding that love can transcend the circumstances of its origin. The production challenges faced in creating Shadow's distinctive visual style required innovative approaches to lighting, costume design, and set decoration. Every element visible on screen had to be carefully considered for how it would appear in the desaturated color palette. This constraint paradoxically liberated the creative team to focus on other visual elements like texture, pattern, and the interplay of light and shadow. The fight choreography in Shadow synthesizes various Chinese martial arts traditions while creating something distinctly cinematic. The umbrella blade fighting style required actors to master complex movements that would look believable while remaining safe to perform. The choreographers drew inspiration from traditional weapons forms while adapting them for the specific needs of the story and the capabilities of the performer. The film's editing rhythm reflects Zhang Yimou's confidence in his material and his respect for his audience's intelligence. Rather than relying on rapid cutting to maintain interest, the film allows scenes to develop at their natural pace, trusting that viewers will remain engaged through character development and visual beauty rather than constant action. This approach requires exceptional skill in pacing and time. The international success of Shadow demonstrates the universal appeal of well-crafted storytelling that respects both its cultural origins and its global audience. The film's themes of identity, loyalty, and the cost of power resonate across cultural boundaries, while its specifically Chinese cultural elements provide educational value for international viewers interested in learning about different perspectives and traditions. The influence of Shadow on subsequent Chinese cinema can be seen in the increased willingness of directors to experiment with distinctive visual approaches and complex thematic content. The film's commercial success proved that audiences would embrace challenging material when it was presented with appropriate craft and vision. This lesson has encouraged more ambitious filmmaking throughout the Chinese film. Technical innovations developed for Shadao. The techniques used to create its monochromatic look while preserving visual interest have been adapted for various purposes, from television commercials to other feature films. The integration of practical and digital effects established new standards for creating believable fantasy environments. The film's treatment of political power and its corruptions speaks to contemporary concerns about leadership and governance worldwide. The Shadow's reluctant assumption of authority and his struggle to use power responsibly provide a model for ethical leadership that transcends its historical setting. These themes have acquired additional relevance in an era of global political instability and questions about democratic governance. The scholarly attention paid to Shadow continues to generate new insights into its themes and techniques. Recent academic papers have examined its treatment of gender roles, its use of architectural space to reinforce thematic content, and its place within the broader tradition of Chinese historical cinema. This ongoing analysis demonstrates the film's richness and complexity. The film's exploration of sacrifice and its consequences has particular resonance in discussions about social responsibility and collective action. The Shadow's willingness to subordinate his personal desires for the greater good raises questions about the limits of such sacrifice and the obligations of those who benefit from others' selflessness. These themes connect to contemporary debates about individual versus collective responsibility. Zhang Yimou's achievement in Shadow represents the culmination of his artistic development while pointing toward future possibilities. The film demonstrates how genre conventions can be transcended through serious thematic exploration and sophisticated visual artistry. This synthesis of entertainment and art provides a model for filmmakers seeking to create commercially viable works with lasting cultural value. The film's treatment of truth and deception has acquired additional significance in an era of concerns about misinformation and the manipulation of public perception. The various characters' struggles to discern reality from appearance reflect contemporary anxieties about authenticity in public discourse and the challenges of maintaining truth in complex information environments. The cultural diplomacy achieved through Shadow's international success has contributed to broader understanding of Chinese perspectives and values. The film serves as a cultural ambassador. This exchange enriches international cinema by expanding the range of stories and approaches available to filmmakers worldwide. The film's visual metaphors operate on subconscious levels to reinforce its thematic content. The recurring imagery of water, mirrors, and shadows creates a symbolic language that supports the narrative without requiring explicit interpretation. These visual elements work emotionally on viewers, creating responses that deepen engagement with the story's themes about identity and authenticity. Behind-the-scenes documentation of Shadow's creation reveals the collaborative process that brought Zhang Yimou's vision to life. The extensive consultation with historical advisors, martial arts experts, and cultural consultants demonstrates the commitment to authenticity that underlies the. This attention to detail contributes to the believable world building that supports audience engagement. The film's influence on contemporary visual arts extends beyond cinema to encompass painting, photography, and design. Artists working in various media have drawn inspiration from its monochromatic aesthetic and its exploration of themes related to identity and authenticity. This cross-pollination between art forms demonstrates the broad cultural impact of Zhang Yimou's artistic achievement. Educational applications of Shadow continue to expand as instructors discover its value for teaching about Chinese culture, political philosophy, and filmmaking technique. The film's rich thematic content provides material for interdisciplinary discussions, while its technical achievements serve as case studies. This educational utility ensures its continued relevance in academic contexts. The enduring appeal of Shadow lies in its successful integration of spectacular entertainment with serious artistic and philosophical content. The film demonstrates that audiences are capable of appreciating complexity and nuance when it is presented with appropriate skill and vision. This lesson continues to influence filmmakers seeking to create works that satisfy both commercial and artistic ambition. Critical reassessment of Shadow reveals new layers of meaning with each viewing. The film's refusal to provide simple answers to complex moral questions reflects Zhang Yimou's maturity as an artist and his confidence in his audience's ability to appreciate ambiguity. This sophistication distinguishes the work from more conventional genre films and ensures its continued critical relevance. The film's exploration of the relationship between individual identity and social role addresses ongoing debates about authenticity versus performance in contemporary life. The Shadow's journey from willing imposter to genuine leader reflects tensions many people experience between their private selves. This universality helps explain the film's continued relevance across diverse cultural contexts. The technical film school study its approach to creating distinctive visual style while maintaining narrative coherence. The methods developed for the production have influenced subsequent films and continue to evolve through new applications and refinements. The political themes explored in Shadow have acquired additional resonance in an era of global political instability and questions about democratic governance. The film's treatment of leadership, loyalty, and the abuse of power speaks to contemporary concerns while drawing on historical patterns and philosophical traditions. This combination of timeless themes with contemporary relevance ensures its continued significance. The artistic legacy of Shadow extends to its influence on approaches to historical filmmaking worldwide. Zhang Yimou's integration of historical accuracy with artistic interpretation provides a model for how filmmakers can respect the past while creating works that speak to contemporary concerns. This approach has inspired directors across cultures to explore historical subjects with greater sophistication and cultural sensitivity. The philosophical depth of Shadow places it among the most intellectually rewarding martial arts films. Its exploration of identity, authenticity, duty, and power transcends genre conventions to address fundamental questions about human nature and social organization. This philosophical sophistication distinguishes the work from more conventional action films and ensures its continued academic and critical attention. The film's treatment of love and relationships under extreme circumstances provides insight into human psychology and social dynamics. The complex emotions experienced by Xiao Ai as she navigates her relationship with the Shadow reflect real psychological processes while serving the narrative's thematic purposes. This psychological authenticity contributes to the film's emotional impact and lasting appeal. The international success of Shadow has contributed to broader recognition. The film serves as an example of how culturally specific stories can achieve universal appeal through skilled storytelling and genuine artistic vision. This success has encouraged greater international attention to Asian filmmakers and their unique contributions to world cinema. The continuing influence of Shadow on contemporary filmmaking can be seen in the increased willingness of directors to experiment with distinctive visual approaches and complex thematic content. The film proved that audiences would embrace challenging material when presented with appropriate craft and vision, encouraging more ambitious and artistically adventurous filmmaking across various national cinema traditions. In the final analysis, Shadow stands as a remarkable achievement in contemporary cinema, demonstrating how traditional storytelling can be revitalized through innovative technique and serious artistic commitment. Zhang Yimou's vision created a work that satisfies on multiple levels simultaneously, providing spectacular entertainment while exploring profound questions about identity, power, and human nature. The film's enduring influence and continued critical attention testify to its success in achieving that rarest of cinematic accomplishments. A work that is both popular and profound, both entertaining and enlightening, both culturally specific and universal. The cinematographic innovations pioneered in Shadow extend far beyond its distinctive monochromatic palette to encompass revolutionary approaches to camera movement, framing, and the integration of natural and artificial lighting. Zhang Yimou and cinematographer Zhao Xiaodong developed techniques that would influence filmmakers worldwide, creating a visual language that serves the story's thematic concern. The camera work throughout Shadow demonstrates exceptional restraint and purpose, with every movement calculated to enhance emotional impact rather than simply showcase technical virtuosity. The film's approach to staging action sequences represents a masterclass in choreographed violence that prioritizes clarity and emotional resonance over chaos and confusion. Unlike contemporary action films that rely heavily on rapid editing and shaky camera work to create excitement, Shadow employs longer takes and more stable camera positions that allow viewers to appreciate the skill and artistry of the martial arts choreography. This approach requires exceptional precision from all participants, as there are fewer opportunities to hide mistakes or enhance performances through post-production manipulation. The production design of Shadow creates environments that function as active participants in the storytelling rather than mere backdrops for action. Every architectural element, from the sweeping curves of palace rooftops to the intimate details of interior chambers, reflects careful consideration of how physical space can reinforce thematic content. The designers drew inspiration from classical Chinese architecture while adapting historical forms to serve the specific needs of the narrative and the distinctive visual approach. The costume design faced unique challenges in creating visually interesting garments that would photograph effectively in the desaturated color scheme while remaining historically authentic. Designers experimented with various fabrics, textures, and patterns to achieve visual distinction without relying on. The resulting costumes demonstrate exceptional attention to detail in their construction and ornamentation, with subtle variations in texture and pattern creating visual interest while maintaining overall aesthetic coherence. The film's exploration of power dynamics extends beyond the central political narrative to encompass broader questions about authority, legitimacy, and the relationship between rulers and subjects. The Shadow's gradual assumption of real authority despite lacking official sanction raises fundamental questions about the sources of political power and the nature of legitimate governance. His effectiveness as a leader suggests that competence and moral character may be more important qualifications for authority than birth or formal appointment. Zhang Yimou's treatment of violence throughout Shadow reflects mature understanding of its sociological and social consequences. Combat scenes are choreographed and filmed to emphasize the human cost of conflict rather than glorifying martial prowess for its own sake. The aftermath of battles receives careful attention, showing the wounded, the grieving, and the long process of recovery that follows significant violence. This approach creates emotional weight that extends beyond immediate physical action. The film's sound design creates an immersive audio environment that supports the visual storytelling without overwhelming it. Natural sounds like rain, wind, and the rustle of fabric provide textural richness to scenes, while the strategic use of silence creates moments of heightened tension or emotional reflection. The integration of traditional Chinese instruments with contemporary recording techniques produces a soundtrack that feels both historically grounded and cinematically immediate. The editing rhythm of Shadow demonstrates exceptional skill in pacing and timing, allowing scenes to develop naturally while maintaining narrative momentum. Rather than relying on rapid cutting to sustain interest, the film trusts in the strength of its performances and visual composition to hold audience attention. This approach requires careful calibration of scene length and internal rhythm to prevent the slower pace from becoming tedious or self-indulgent. The international reception of Shadow reveals how cultural context influences interpretation of cinematic themes and imagery. Western critics often emphasize the individual psychological drama of the protagonist's identity crisis, while Asian reviewers frequently focused on political implications and commentary on governance and leadership. These varying interpretations demonstrate the richness of Zhang Yimou's achievement in creating a work that operates successfully across cultural. The film's influence on subsequent Chinese cinema can be measured not only in direct visual imitation, but in increased willingness among directors to experiment with unconventional approaches to familiar genres. Shadow's commercial success proved that audiences would embrace challenging material when presented with appropriate artistry and vision, encouraging more ambitious filmmaking throughout the industry. The technical innovations developed for Shadow have found applications beyond cinema in various forms of visual media. The methods used to create the monochromatic look, while preserving visual interest, have been adapted for television, advertising, and digital media. The integration of practical and digital effects established new standards for creating believable fantasy environments that maintained photographic credibility while achieving spectacular visual impact. The scholarly analysis of Shadow continues to generate new insights into its artistic and cultural significance. Recent academic papers have examined its relationship to classical Chinese literature, its treatment of Confucian ideals about governance and social harmony, and its place within the broader tradition of Chinese historical cinema. This ongoing critical attention demonstrates the film's intellectual richness and its capacity to reward detailed study and the film's exploration of loyalty and betrayal operates on multiple levels simultaneously, from the personal relationships between individual characters to broader questions about duty to state and society. The Shadow's complex loyalties create internal conflicts that drive much of the narrative tension, while other characters navigate their own competing obligations and desires. This layered approach to moral complexity reflects real-world ethical dilemmas, while serving the dramatic needs of the story. Zhang Yimou's direction, throughout Shadow, demonstrates complete mastery of cinematic language, using every available tool to serve his artistic vision. The integration of performance, cinematography, production design, and sound creates a unified aesthetic experience that supports the thematic content without overwhelming it. This holistic approach to filmmaking reflects years of experience and artistic development, resulting in a work that feels both effortless and meticulously crafted. The film's treatment of memory and identity draws on philosophical traditions that question the stability of selfhood and the reliability of personal recollection. The Shadow's gradual loss of his original identity parallels broader questions about whether the self is fixed or constantly changing. This philosophical depth elevates what could have been simple entertainment into serious artistic exploration of fundamental human concerns. The visual metaphors employed throughout Shadow create a symbolic language that operates subconsciously on viewers, while supporting conscious interpretation of thematic content. The recurring imagery of shadows, reflections, and doubling reinforces the central concerns with duplicity and hidden truth. These visual elements work emotionally on audiences, creating responses that deepen engagement with the narrative without requiring explicit intellectual analysis. The political implications of Shadow extend to contemporary discussions about leadership and governance in democratic societies. The film's treatment of the relationship between rulers and subjects, the sources of political legitimacy, and the costs of maintaining power speak to these themes have acquired additional relevance in an era of global political instability. The film's exploration of gender roles and relationships provides nuanced treatment of how women navigate systems dominated by masculine power structures. Xiao Ai's position as wife to a commander places her in a uniquely vulnerable situation, where she possesses intimate knowledge but lacks formal authority to act on her observations. Her gradual recognition of the deception and her ultimate response reflect both individual agency and systemic constraints. The cultural diplomacy achieved through Shadow's international success has contributed to broader understanding of Chinese perspectives on history, politics, and social values. The film serves as a cultural ambassador, introducing global audiences to specifically Chinese ways of thinking about art. This exchange enriches international cinema by expanding the range of available stories and approaches. The film's treatment of sacrifice and its consequences provides material for ongoing discussions about individual responsibility and collective welfare. The Shadow's willingness to subordinate his personal identity for the greater good raises questions about the limits of such sacrifice and the obligations of those who benefit from others' selflessness. These themes connect to contemporary debates about social responsibility and the balance between individual rights and collective needs. The artistic legacy of Shadow extends to its influence on approaches to historical filmmaking across various national cinema traditions. Zhang Yimou's integration, historical authenticity with artistic interpretation, provides a model for how filmmakers can respect the past while creating works that speak to contemporary concerns. This approach has inspired directors worldwide to explore historical subjects with greater sophistication and cultural sensitivity. The enduring appeal of Shadow lies in its successful synthesis of spectacular entertainment with serious artistic and philosophical content. The film demonstrates that audiences are capable of appreciating complexity and ambiguity when presented with appropriate skill and vision. This lesson continues to influence filmmakers seeking to create works that satisfy both commercial expectations and artistic ambitions, while contributing to meaningful cultural discourse. The film's exploration of the relationship between appearance and reality reflects contemporary concerns about authenticity in public life and the challenge of discerning truth in complex information environments. The various characters' struggles to distinguish between genuine and performed behavior mirror broader social anxieties about the reliability of public discourse and the manipulation of popular perception through media and political messaging. The technical achievements of Shadow continue to inspire innovation in cinematography and visual effects across the global film industry. The methods developed for creating its distinctive aesthetic while maintaining narrative coherence have influenced subsequent productions and continue to evolve through new applications and technological refinements. Film schools worldwide study the production as an example of how technical innovation can serve artistic vision. The philosophical depth of Shadow places it among the most intellectually rewarding films of its generation, transcending genre conventions to address fundamental questions about human nature, social organization, and the sources of meaning and purpose in life. This intellectual sophistication distinguishes the work from more conventional entertainment, while ensuring its continued relevance for audiences seeking substantive cinematic. The film's treatment of love and relationships under conditions of deception and political pressure provides insights into human psychology and the resilience of emotional bonds under extreme circumstances. The complex emotions experienced by characters as they navigate competing loyalties and hidden truths reflect authentic psychological processes while serving the narrative's thematic purposes about trust, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption. The continuing influence of Shadow on contemporary filmmaking can be measured in the increased willingness of directors across various national cinema traditions to experiment with distinctive visual approaches and complex thematic content. The film's success proved that audiences would embrace challenging material when presented with genuine artistry, encouraging more ambitious and intellectually adventurous filmmaking worldwide. The international critical acclaim received by Shadow has contributed to broader recognition of the artistic achievements possible within genre filmmaking when approached with serious creative intention. The film demonstrates that martial arts cinema can serve as a vehicle for sophisticated exploration of political, philosophical, and psychological themes, while maintaining the excitement and visual spectacle that define the genre's popular. In retrospective analysis, Shadow stands as a defining achievement in contemporary world cinema, demonstrating how traditional storytelling forms can be revitalized through innovative technique and serious artistic commitment. Zhang Yimou's vision created a work that operates successfully on multiple levels simultaneously, providing spectacular entertainment while exploring profound questions about identity, power, loyalty. The film's influence extends beyond cinema to encompass broader cultural discussions about authenticity, performance, and the relationship between individual identity and social role. These themes resonate particularly strongly in contemporary society, where questions about authentic self-expression versus social expectations continue to generate debate and reflection across various cultural contexts. The lasting significance of Shadow lies not only in its immediate artistic achievements, but in its contribution to ongoing conversations about the possibilities and responsibilities of cinematic art. The film proves that popular entertainment can serve serious cultural and intellectual purposes without sacrificing its essential entertainment value, providing a model for future filmmakers seeking to create works of both commercial appeal and lasting cultural significance. The intricate layering of Shadow's narrative structure reveals itself through multiple viewings, as Zhang Yimou has crafted a work that deliberately conceals and reveals information in patterns that mirror the central themes of deception and truth. The screenplay adapted from traditional Chinese sources while incorporating contemporary psychological insights. Each revelation about character motivations or plot developments forces viewers to reconsider earlier scenes, creating a viewing experience that continues to evolve long after the credits roll. The film's treatment of architectural space as narrative element deserves extensive analysis, as every location from intimate chambers to vast courtyards serves specific dramatic and thematic functions. The palace complex of Pei becomes a character in its own right, with its labyrinthine corridors and hidden passages, reflecting the psychological complexity of the human relationships played out within its walls. The seasonal progression throughout Shadow provides subtle structural support for the character development and thematic evolution. The film begins in autumn, with falling leaves suggesting themes of decline and transformation, progresses through winter's harsh realities of conflict and suffering, and concludes with subtle hints of spring renewal and the possibility of redemption. This natural cycle reinforces the human drama while providing visual variety within the constrained color palette that defines the film's aesthetic approach. The musical score by Gustavo Santaolalla integrates traditional Chinese instruments with contemporary orchestral arrangements to create an audio landscape that supports the film's temporal and cultural complexity. Ancient instruments like the guqin and erhu provide historical authenticity, while modern recording techniques create cinematic impact that serves contemporary audiences. The composer's restraint in orchestration mirrors Zhiyou's restraint, allowing silence and space to create emotional impact as effectively as more obvious musical flourishes. The casting choices throughout Shadow reflect careful attention to how physical appearance. Deng Chao's dual performance required not only technical skill in distinguishing between two characters who must appear identical to other characters while remaining distinct to audiences, but also the emotional range to convey the psychological complexity of both roles. His preparation included extensive study of classical Chinese literature and philosophy to understand the cultural context that shapes both characters. Sun Li's portrayal of Xiao Ai demonstrates exceptional subtlety in conveying a character's growing awareness and internal conflict without resorting to obvious dramatic gestures. Her performance requires precise calibration of expression and body language to show the character's journey from trust through suspicion to understanding and eventual acceptance. The actress worked with movement coaches and studied classical Chinese poetry to develop appropriate physical vocabulary for expressing complex emotions within the cultural context of the story. The supporting cast contributes to the overall ensemble excellence that elevates every scene beyond simple plot advancement to create rich interpersonal dynamics that reflect the film's themes about loyalty, ambition, and the cost of. Each courtier, soldier, and servant possesses distinct personality and motivation that contributes to the believable world-building essential for audience engagement with the more fantastical elements of the story. The film's approach to depicting violence reflects mature understanding of its psychological and social consequences while maintaining the excitement and visual spectacle expected in martial arts cinema. Combat sequences are choreographed to emphasize skill and strategy over brute force, with outcomes determined by intelligence and preparation rather than simple physical superiority. This approach reinforces themes about the importance of wisdom and planning while providing spectacular entertainment value. The production timeline for Shadow extended over several years, allowing for the extensive preparation and careful execution required to achieve its distinctive visual style. Pre-production included extensive research into historical periods, consultation with martial arts experts, and development of new filming techniques to achieve the desired aesthetic effects. The extended schedule allowed for careful attention to detail in every aspect of production, from costume construction to set decoration to actor preparation. The film's exploration of power dynamics extends beyond the obvious political relationships to encompass more. The Shadow's relationship with servants and lower-ranking soldiers reveals different aspects of his character, while illustrating how authority operates at various social levels. These interactions demonstrate Zhang Yimou's interest in showing how power affects all members of society rather than focusing exclusively on elite political maneuvering. The international distribution strategy for Shadow reflected confidence in the film's ability to transcend cultural boundaries. Marketing campaigns in different territories emphasized various aspects of the film depending on local audience preferences and familiarity with Chinese cinema. This flexible approach contributed to the film's global success while maintaining artistic integrity and cultural authenticity. The film's treatment of loyalty and betrayal operates through multiple parallel storylines that illuminate different aspects of these themes. The Shadow's loyalty to his master conflicts with his growing attachment to Xiao Ai and his sense of responsibility to the people of Pei. Other characters face similar conflicts between personal desires and social obligations, creating a network of moral complexity that reflects real-world ethical dilemmas while serving the dramatic needs of the narrative. The cinematography techniques developed for Shadow have influenced subsequent films, both within China. The methods used to achieve visual interest within a limited color palette have been studied and adapted by other filmmakers seeking to create distinctive aesthetic approaches. The integration of traditional Chinese artistic principles with contemporary filmmaking technology provides a model for how cultural traditions can be preserved and revitalized through modern media. The film's editing rhythm demonstrates exceptional understanding of how scenes are allowed to breathe and develop naturally rather than being rushed to maintain constant action or excitement. This approach requires confidence in the material and respect for audience intelligence, trusting that viewers will remain engaged through character development and visual beauty rather than constant stimulation. The sound design creates an immersive audio environment that extends beyond dialogue and music to encompass ambient sound. The careful layering of natural sounds like wind, rain, and footsteps creates textural richness that enhances viewer engagement while supporting the film's realistic approach to fantastical material. The film's exploration of identity and authenticity resonates with contemporary discussions about social media, public persona, and the challenge of maintaining genuine relationships in environments that encourage performance and self-presentation. The Shadow's struggle to maintain his assumed identity while developing authentic feelings reflects modern anxieties about the relationship between public and private selves in an increasingly connected and surveilled world. The scholarly attention paid to Shadow continues to generate new insights into its artistic techniques and cultural significance. Recent academic papers have examined its relationship to classical Chinese literature, its treatment of Confucian ideals about governance and social responsibility, and its place within the broader evolution of martial arts cinema. The film's treatment of memory and its relationship to identity draws on both Western psychology and Eastern philosophy to create a nuanced exploration of how people construct and maintain their sense of self. The Shadow's gradual loss of his original identity parallels broader questions about whether personality is fixed or constantly evolving through experience and circumstance. This philosophical depth elevates the material beyond simple entertainment. The visual metaphors employed throughout Shadow create a symbolic language that operates on multiple levels simultaneously. The recurring imagery of water, mirrors, and shadows reinforces themes about duplicity and hidden truth, while also serving more universal symbolic functions related to reflection, purification, and the unconscious mind. These visual elements work both consciously and subconsciously on audience. The political implications of Shadow extend to contemporary discussions about democratic governance and the relationship between rulers and citizens. The film's treatment of the sources of political legitimacy and the responsibilities of leadership speak to ongoing debates about representation, accountability, and the proper limits of governmental authority. These themes have acquired additional relevance in an era of global political instability and question. The film's influence on contemporary Chinese cinema can be measured not only in direct aesthetic imitation, but in increased willingness among filmmakers to tackle complex thematic material and experiment with unconventional narrative approaches. Shadow's success proved that audiences would embrace challenging content when presented with appropriate artistry, encouraging more ambitious filmmaking throughout the industry, and contributing to the technical innovations developed for Shadow continue to influence filmmaking practices worldwide. The methods used to create its distinctive monochromatic look, while maintaining visual interest, have been adapted and refined for various applications from other feature films to television and digital media. The integration of practical and digital effects established new standards for creating believable fantasy environments that maintain photographic credibility. The film's exploration of sacrifice and its consequences provides material for ongoing discussions about individual responsibility and collective welfare in contemporary society. The Shadow's willingness to subordinate his personal identity for the greater good raises questions about the limits of such sacrifice and the obligations of those who benefit from others' selflessness. These themes connect to current debates about social responsibility and the balance between. The cultural diplomacy achieved through Shadow's international success has contributed to broader understanding of Chinese perspectives on history, politics, and social values among global audiences. The film serves as cultural ambassador, introducing international viewers to specifically Chinese approaches to questions about honor, duty, and social harmony, while exploring themes that resonate across cultural boundaries. The film's treatment of love and relationships under conditions of deception and political pressure provides insights into human psychology and the resilience of emotional bonds under extreme circumstances. The complex emotions experienced by characters as they navigate competing loyalties and hidden truths reflect authentic psychological processes while serving the narrative's thematic exploration of trust, forgiveness, and the possibility of. The enduring appeal of Shadow lies in its successful integration of spectacular entertainment with serious artistic and philosophical content. The film demonstrates that audiences are capable of appreciating complexity and ambiguity when presented with genuine artistry and respect for their intelligence. This lesson continues to influence filmmakers worldwide who seek to create works that satisfy both commercial expectations and artistic ambitions. The film's exploration of the relationship between appearance and reality reflects contemporary concerns about authenticity in public life and the challenge of discerning truth in complex information environments. The various characters' struggles to distinguish between genuine and performed behavior mirror broader social anxieties about the reliability of public discourse and the manipulation of popular perception through media and political messaging systems. The philosophical depth of Shadow places it among the most intellectually rewarding films of contemporary cinema, transcending genre conventions to address fundamental questions about human nature, social organization, and the sources of meaning and purpose in individual lives. This intellectual sophistication distinguishes the work from conventional entertainment while ensuring its continued relevance for audiences seeking substantive cinematic. The continuing influence of Shadow on international filmmaking can be measured in the increased willingness of directors across various cultural traditions to experiment with distinctive visual approaches and complex thematic content. The film's critical and commercial success prove that audiences worldwide would embrace challenging material when presented with genuine artistic vision, encouraging more ambitious and intellectually adventurous filmmaking across national boundaries and genre. In final analysis, Shadow represents a pinnacle achievement in contemporary world cinema, demonstrating how traditional storytelling forms can be revitalized through innovative technique and serious artistic commitment. Zhang Yimou's vision created a work that operates successfully across multiple interpretive levels, simultaneously providing spectacular visual entertainment while exploring profound questions about identity, power, loyalty, and the lasting significance of Shadow extends beyond its immediate artistic achievements to encompass its contribution to ongoing cultural conversations about authenticity, performance, and the relationship between individual identity and social role in contemporary global society. These themes resonate across cultural boundaries while maintaining specific cultural authenticity, creating a